Shout out to my mutual Joy Reid for drawing my attention to this next video clip I'm about to show you. This is a subject I have been wanting to talk about for quite a while, so please watch this clip and then come back and let's chat about it.
These protesters in Mexico City say cross-border migration is changing their country's capital for the worse. Over the last decade, an influx of mostly American so-called digital nomads have moved here to work remotely and also enjoy a cheaper cost of living. Protesters say the newcomers have driven up rents beyond the reach of locals.
If they're going to live in a country, they have to contribute to that country. The first and simplest issue is legal migration. They come here with visas or no visas, and still the change in purchasing power generates these problems of gentrification and displacement.
I'm here because gentrification is just one more step towards colonization, dispossession, and the exploitation of our resources. Right now it's about the people, but it won't be long before they run out of oil, water, or lithium in other countries and come and take them from us.
Many Americans in Mexico are able to still receive high salaries in dollars from U.S. companies by working on laptops from their apartments.
The government is directing its public policies towards people with higher purchasing power, often illegally displacing local populations who have lived in these neighborhoods for 40, 50, and we have even documented cases of up to 60 years. In 5 years, rents have increased by 47%. This is violent for the local population. We are debating whether to pay for electricity, water, or food. Of course, we choose to eat.
Some activists blame Mexico's government for encouraging them. However, there's no simple fix. Imposing tougher visa restrictions on Americans could worsen relations with the U.S. Mexican citizens in the U.S. also send billions of dollars in remittances back to their families in Mexico. In a world where travel and communication are faster and easier than ever, these two nations are finding it harder to have neighborly relations.
For everybody who has been criticizing me for not making permaculture-related content since the election, buckle up, because here we go. This is one of the topics that I have talked about in relation to permaculture that has gotten me the most negative feedback, the most vitriolic comments, the most outright attacks, the most pearl clutching, the most absolute flopping around on the ground temper tantrums. People in permaculture do not want to hear about how we have a massive colonizer problem. For years, in permaculture groups that I'm a part of, on my Facebook page, on my YouTube channel, I have been talking about how white people in permaculture, who are the majority of folks who practice permaculture, which is a design system meant to create regenerative societies of people that have a healing relationship with the planet and sustainable community, how we are inherently unsustainable because so many of the white folks who want to do permaculture and have their little permaculture homestead or their farm, they go and play colonizer in another country in order to be able to afford to do it. And here we see Americans, especially right now, we are seeing left-leaning Americans who are fleeing the oppression in the United States, or even the potential threat of oppression, or even just shit is really hard right now and I don't want to stay and fight. And I understand there are people, including some of my mutuals, who have already left the country. I understand for people in those most oppressed groups why you would need to flee the United States right now. No judgment against those folks, but I've also seen a number of very wealthy, not particularly threatened folks who understand that things in America are hard, are expensive, it's a rough ride right now, and they're like, peace out, I'm gonna go somewhere where life is a lot easier for me. And just like the folks in permaculture, we see Americans fleeing right now, wanting to go somewhere where the cost of living is lower. They can have a higher standard of living because their dollar goes farther, and they are playing colonizer. They are gentrifying the communities that they move into. They are driving up the cost of living, and they are creating harm where they go. Now, I just want to be really clear here. You don't have to own land or have acreage to practice permaculture at all. it's not actually just about farming. There are people who live in apartments who practice permaculture. There are people who live in co-housing communities that practice permaculture. There are people like me that live in the city. I have a 1/4 acre plot in Portland, Oregon, and that is where I practice permaculture. Sure, when I was younger, I fantasized about if I could have 5 or 10 or 20, 40 acres and have my little permaculture farm there. And actually what I really wanted was not a farm just for myself, but rather a intentional community, a co-housing community where lots of us could share the land and the labor and the yields as well, and develop not just a sustainable relationship with the land, but with each other, right? I still long to have that kind of community. I still wish I could build something like that in my neighborhood in Portland, and I've talked about that a lot over the years. But one of the big criticisms that white people especially have about permaculture is that land is very expensive. People have this idea that in order to do permaculture, you need to have acreage and you need to have your little dream farm, your little permaculture homestead, et cetera, et cetera. That's totally not true. But folks will say like, okay, well, there's an easy solution to that. Land is really expensive in the US and the UK. I got a great solution for you. White people have been doing it for a really long time. Move to another country where the cost of living is lower and the land is cheaper. And man, you can buy all kinds of acreage, and you can have like people that you hire that work for you for like a tiny fraction of the amount you could spend in the US. And everything is so cheap here. It's so cheap. It's amazing. Just be an expat. Go to Panama, go to Mexico, go to Belize. There's a lot of people that go to Belize and, have your little permaculture dreams there. I know there are also people who go to Africa. There are also people that go to Southeast Asia in order to create their permaculture homestead. And they're all playing colonizer, y'all. And I've been so critical of this for years, and other white people do not like to hear it. They'll get their feathers all ruffled, and they'll get their hackles up, and they'll get outright pissed at me, like, how dare you call me out on this? And say, well, if permaculture has the ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share, then we cannot be going and playing colonizer in other countries and driving up the cost of living, pushing people off their farms, and then also treating the people in those communities as just like cheap labor. We can't come in and insert ourselves and set up little, like fiefdoms or whatever. That's so antithetical to everything about permaculture. But people don't like to hear that. In fact, there are all kinds of permaculture gurus who have whole courses on how you can go set up your little permaculture homestead for real cheap in Central America, and how you can stretch your dollars so much farther. You can live like so richly in another country. And there's so little introspection, so little reflection, so little awareness, intentional or not, about how what you are doing is you are playing colonizer. You are being a colonizer in these other countries. In college, I went to Belize to study songbird migration. I'm just pointing to this pin because it's a bird, but I wasn't studying western meadowlarks in Belize. Anyway, I was studying songbird migration, and I was with a group of other college students who all had their own projects. And I absolutely fell in love with Belize. I loved the food, the people, everything about the country was gorgeous. The birding was amazing. And when I got a little bit older, I had some permaculture acquaintances who were white from America, went to Belize and bought acreage because it was so cheap and they could have their farm. It was much less oversight, and they could live like kings. They could live very high on the hog because they had American dollars that they were taking into Belize. They were selling their homes in America and moving to Belize. And at the time, we were living in a 600 square foot house with our family of 4. We were barely getting by. I was working for WIC at the time. And those mutuals of mine were like, you should come to Belize. You could buy acres. You could have your dream farm here. And I was like, no, who are the local people that you're displacing? Who now is no longer able to purchase land because you came in with your American cash and were able to outbid all of them for that farm? And lo and behold, this is what we're seeing with expats right now in the United States. They are taking their digital nomad visas, they're taking their privilege, and they're going down there and living very high on the hog, playing colonizer, making things very difficult for Mexicans in Mexico. Meanwhile, our government is oppressing Mexicans here in this country. We are abducting them. We are destroying families. We are terrorizing families. We are putting people in detention facilities, depriving them of their liberty. Again, I understand why some individuals and some families should be leaving the United States right now. That does not excuse any of us of our obligation to examine our privilege. We as white Americans are in a position where we could be refugees, but also be colonizers and oppressors at the same time. And I appreciate Joy sharing that video, and I really hope that we all think about what we're doing.